I'm going to talk about the fugue from BWV847 in C minor. There's a prelude and a fugue, as there are in the Well-Tempered Clavier of Bach, where he goes around the circle of fifths in major and minor. This is the C minor fugue. Now, the fugue means to chase. There's a subject that keeps recurring. There's also a lot of imitation inside of the fugue. If it's in three voices, which this one is, you want to be aware of the alto voice, soprano, this one, and the bass. Those are the elements of this particular fugue. Now you want to know the subject. The subject is introduced at the beginning, and that's the first thing you want to identify. So it starts in the alto voice. He actually starts the subject in the alto, in the left hand. And so this is the subject. Short, short, roll to there. That's the subject. Now, after the subject comes in initially, it comes next as what's called the tonal answer. This is the subject is now in the dominant key, and it occurs in this fugue in the soprano as the second voice of the subject and the dominant. So if you're in C minor, you're going up 5 notes to G. It doesn't mean it's going to be G major. In this case, it's going to be G minor. But it's the dominant, meaning it's the dominant note. And the dominant minor would be G minor. So he's starting on G. So the answer, the tonal answer, which has to be part of the fugue form, comes next. I'm just isolating these subjects first. So this is the subject in the second voice. It sounds a little different in the beginning. Short, short. Okay, now when the tonal answer comes, which is what I just played, there's an introduction of what's called a counter subject. Counter subject means another kind of counter subject. And the counter subject is this. It's descending scale in melodic. Melodic form, you raise the 6th and 7th note going up the scale. Usually you return to the natural form. But Bach likes to use the raised notes going down, and that's what he does here. So he has the counter subject, which is quite long. It's continues. Lift. So that's quite a long group of measures. That's the counter subject. So those are the 3 ingredients that you need to know. You need to know the subject, you need to know the second voice that it appears, the first time, the second time, and then you need to know the counter subject. Now, the next thing you need to know is the episodes. Now, the exposition is when the subject appears in all the voices. In this case, because it's a 3-voice fugue, the exposition will be completed when you hear the complete subject in the bass voice, because we haven't yet heard that. That will complete what's called the exposition. Now, thus far you have this. You start the subject, and I'm doing it in slow motion. Then you have the counter subject against the tonal answer of the second subject voice. Now, this analysis that I have here is by a man named Jose Rodriguez Alvira. He did a theoretical analysis on the internet that actually is very good. What he says comes next is what he calls a transition that is preparing for the appearance of the third voice, as I mentioned, in the bass. And what he does is he takes elements of the subject in the transition. And you could hear it's very motivically, which means there's an idea here embodied in the transition, which is rhythmic. Rhythmic and also melodic. You can tell what he took from the subject when he does these short little pieces of the subject. Da da da, bum, bum, da da da. You can hear it. Da da da, bum, bum, beating. So that's on the way to the left hand coming in. Now in the left hand here in the transition, you have what's based on the counter subject in inversion. Remember, the counter subject came down and continue. What happens here in this transition that's leading to the statement of the subject in the left hand, which would complete the exposition, is now an ascending scale, and it's a piece, a piece of the counter subject. You're just borrowing ideas. So he does. And actually this finishes it. Now there you see the idea crossing over, this counter subject inversion crossing over into the right hand. Because often you're going to see counter subjects or subjects divided between the hands. You have to be able to continue the voice over to the other hand without thinking it's off in left field. So that was the little transition, and if you put it together, you get okay, so there's the transition. Now, according to Mr. Rodriguez Elvira, he says now that the subject has to finally appear in the left hand, in the bass voice, to complete the exposition. And indeed, here it is. So there it is. Now, on top of, and that completes the exposition. On top of that, you have counter subject 1. Counter subject 1. And that is this. Now, you can hear counter subject 1 in its full form. Now what's introduced here is counter subject 2 underneath counter subject 1. And here's counter subject 2. It's very fragmented. It's this. And notice I use thumb, thumb, thumb. I wouldn't normally want to use thumb, thumb there, but it's determined, that fingering, by what's happening above in the top voice. So if I put together just the counter subject and add counter subject 2, counter subject 1, and then counter subject 2, we get this. We get like a duetto. Okay, and against that we have the final subject statement in the left hand. So put it together, we get so this video is just going to be for this, the exposition.